Imagine Albert Einstein, seconds away from discovering the theory of relativity. The chalk is mid-equation. The universe is unfolding in his mind, a fragile, brilliant constellation of thought connecting for the first and only time in history. And suddenly, ding! A tiny chime shatters his cosmos. The mandate, time to take a break, go scroll Instagram. It's absurd. But this isn't just a historical fantasy. It's a perfect metaphor for a modern betrayal we institutionalize daily. The moment of deepest flow is sacrificed to the tyranny of the clock, a system that values scheduled intervals over genuine intellectual breakthroughs. And we have all felt a version of this betrayal. It's the relentless sensation of running a race you can't win, where the finish line moves faster than you can sprint. You wake at 5 a.m., track every hour, with meticulous precision, and strive to become the most productive version of yourself. Yet, at the end of the day, you're left with a peculiar hollowness, more exhausted than fulfilled, having checked off boxes but having created nothing of substance. This central paradox of this hustle culture is perfectly encapsulated by a modern phenomenon: the study with me trend. It has become a ubiquitous feature of the productivity landscape, heavily featuring the Pomodoro technique. For the uninitiated, it's 25 minutes of work followed by a 5-minute break, a timer ticking beside you like a tiny time bomb of motivation. On the surface, it's a system designed to combat procrastination, but it has morphed into a performance of focus rather than focus itself. YouTube thumbnails promise a sanitized solution, perfectly arranged desks with plants that look happier than we've ever been. Timers tick with the sterile certainty of a rocket launch, and notes are highlighted with the intensity of a brain surgeon. Don't get me wrong, there's something compulsively comforting about watching strangers study. It feels productive, a form of productive voyeurism that tricks the brain into feeling accomplished, even when you're not. But when you try to replicate this perfectly curated system, reality intrudes. Your focus, once a steady stream, now slips through your fingers like water. And that's when the insidious whisper comes. If I'm not doing it exactly like that, with the perfect setup and rigid discipline, maybe I'm failing. I started to wonder why this method felt so brittle and counterproductive. Frankly, when I see some of these creators, who have apparently been in college for 6 years, I have to question if they're spending more time editing the vlog, crafting the narrative of work, than actually doing the deep, messy work itself. Perhaps that's why the constant interruption of the Pomodoro timer is so easy for them to adopt. Their primary product is the appearance of study, not the profound engagement with it. But for the rest of us, trying to grasp a complex concept, or prepare for a crucial exam, the chime of the timer isn't a motivator. It's a guillotine for a train of thought that was just gathering speed. It severs the connection to that unfolding universe in our own minds. So I went looking for a different answer, a path out of this performative cycle. And I found it. The secret to profound focus is not in the clock. It is in the courageous, liberating absence of the clock. Chapter 1. The Two Keys, a story of time and depth. Meet our protagonist, Alex. He seems cheerful and present now, but he wasn't always this way. This is the story of before he broke the shackles of the Pomodoro technique and the tyranny of the productivity grind. Before he found his way out, Alex lived in a state of permanent buffering, his mind a place of constant motion that led nowhere. His internal world was a browser with 100 open tabs. One was playing a podcast on self-improvement, another was cycling through a list of anxieties, and 5 more were planning a future he was too overwhelmed to actually build. He was a prisoner of potential, constantly in motion, yet perpetually stuck in the loading screen of his own life. Every morning began with a silent promise of reinvention. New day, new me, he'd declare to the mirror, a mantra that felt more like a threat. He was an archivist of empty methods, collecting productivity systems like sacred relics. He owned more color-coded notebooks than finished projects, each pristine page a tiny monument to his hope that the right system would finally quiet the noise within. He wore routines that didn't belong to him, waking at 5 a.m. because a billionaire suggested it, segmenting his day into rigid, 25-minute chunks with a Pomodoro technique. He believed if he could just control the clock, he could control his mind. But the timer on his phone became a stern judge, and every 5-minute break felt like guilt wearing a hoodie. He was fighting a war against time, and time, relentless and impersonal, was always winning. The more he forced his focus, the more his mind rebelled, a caged animal looking for any escape. He was treating a deep, spiritual thirst with the tools of an efficiency expert. The anxiety of never measuring up grew from a whisper to a constant, heavy hum. It was the weight of the gap, the chasm between the person he was and the productive avatar he believed he should be. One night, exhausted and hollowed out by self-doubt, he stumbled upon the description of a week-long silent meditation retreat, deep in a remote mountain monastery. No phones, no schedules, no productivity hacks, just silence. People went there not to fix their focus, but to understand why they had lost it in the first place. Driven by a desperation that felt like his last resort, Alex booked a ticket, abandoning the noise of the world in search of a signal. On the first morning, disoriented by the quiet, he wandered from the meditation hall and found himself in a vast, stone courtyard. There, an old monk was sweeping. His movements were slow, unhurried, and utterly deliberate. Each stroke of the broom was not a task to be completed, but an action to be fully experienced. Alex watched, mesmerized. This, he thought, isn't productivity. This is presence. It was a perfect manifestation of sustained awareness, the absolute opposite of his own fragmented existence. Then, a soft, resonant bell chimed from the main hall. The monk stopped sweeping instantly, letting the broom rest mid-stroke. He didn't check a timer. He didn't seem relieved or interrupted. He simply stretched his fingers, took a deep, conscious breath, and settled into a perfect, poised stillness. The silence itself seemed to deepen. When the bell chimed again, he resumed with the same unshakable calm. Alex's analytical mind, so accustomed to finding patterns, kicked in. The interval. The immediate break. The rhythm. Wait. Is this some ancient, spiritual Pomodoro? The irony was too precise to ignore. He had to know. He found a senior monk in the garden later that day. "Excuse me," Alex began, his voice soft from disuse. "I saw the sweeping, the bell, the breaks. It had a rhythm. Is that a form of meditation? A timed practice?" The monk laughed, a sound as peaceful as wind through leaves. "No," he said. "We are not timing the sweeping. The bell does not mean stop working. It means return." Return to what? To yourself. To the awareness that exists in the space between actions. We do not stop because the time ends. We stop because the moment ends. We complete the cycle of attention, not the segment of time. Alex felt the foundations of his worldview crack. His entire life had been built around the tyranny of the segment. So, Pomodoro is wrong? Alex asked, almost pleadingly. "It is incomplete," the monk corrected, his voice gentle. "Pomodoro is a wonderful tool for one thing. It trains the mind to begin. It is a shield against the fear of starting, the inertia of resistance. But it does not train the mind to finish. It trains you to interrupt. It mistakes the schedule for the work." Alex finally asked the question that had brought him to the mountains. Then, what is the true tool for depth? For real understanding? The monk's gaze was both intense and soft. "You must choose your tool based on the task," he explained. "There are two keys. When a task requires discipline, when you must overcome resistance and simply begin, you use time. You need the structure to build the ramp. But when a task requires depth, when you must understand, create, or become one with the work, you use the other key. You remove time. You step into the river of the task itself, and you let it carry you. Remove time. Alex whispered, the concept feeling both terrifying and profoundly liberating. Pomodoro is a doorway, the monk said. It teaches you to cross the threshold. But beginning is not the same as understanding. Flow is the state where the self vanishes, and only the task remains. Pomodoro trains your mind to start. Flow is what happens when you forget to stop. Alex fell into a deep silence. He saw his life with sudden, painful clarity. He had been so focused on perfecting his sprint out of the starting blocks that he never learned how to run the race. The monk offered a final, knowing smile. The rule is simple, yet it changes everything. Use time for discipline. Remove time for depth. And what if I don't know which one I need? Alex asked, his voice betraying a lifetime of self-doubt. The monk placed a warm, steady hand on his shoulder. The confusion is not in the method, but in the self. You have been asking, how should I do this? The real question is, what does this task need from me? You don't lack discipline, Alex. You lack the clarity to know when to use it. In that moment, the last of the buffering circles vanished. The page loaded. Alex had finally arrived. And with that, the monk's words became a compass in Alex's pocket, a tool for navigation, not a trophy for display. He packed his bags, offered a deep bow of gratitude, and returned home, not with a rigid new system, but with a transformative question to guide him: what does this task need from me? Now, let's move beyond the monastery's metaphors and ground the monk's wisdom in the tangible language of cognitive science and the unassailable proof of history. The distinction between discipline and depth is not merely philosophical, it is biological. The scheduled interruption of a misapplied timer carries a devastating cognitive cost. Deep work, the state of intense, uninterrupted concentration that forges new neural pathways and creates real mastery, requires the mind to construct a complex, internal scaffolding for the problem at hand. This fragile architecture of thought takes time to build. A rigid timer, set for an arbitrary 25 minutes, often forces you to dismantle this scaffold just as the final beams are being set in place. That 5-minute break, especially if spent scrolling through the fragmented world of a smartphone, is not a true rest. It is a cognitive demolition. Your working memory is flushed, your focus fragmented. When you return, you don't simply resume. You are forced to lay the foundation all over again, paying what psychologists call a switching cost in both time and mental energy. This constant, rhythmic construction and demolition actively trains the brain out of the flow state. It reinforces a mindset of shallow engagement, making the sustained neural connections required for breakthrough insights and profound understanding physically harder to achieve. If you doubt this, look at the historical record. The monk's lesson has been proven not in labs, but in lives. Franz Kafka wrote his haunting prose in the silent, solitary hours after midnight. Virginia Woolf filled her pages with the sharp, clear light of the early morning. Two of the most brilliant literary minds of the 20th century. Two diametrically opposed schedules. Both created masterpieces. Their genius did not flourish because of the hour on the clock, but in spite of it. They succeeded because they discovered a rhythm that allowed them to enter the moment completely, shielding their depth from the world's interruptions. Modern science gives this self-knowledge a name: your chronotype, your body's innate, biological energy rhythm. The lion rises with the sun, proactive and peak-focused in the morning. The wolf comes alive as dusk falls, hitting a stride when the world sleeps. The bear follows the sun's gentle arc, with a steady, reliable energy flow throughout the day. True productivity, therefore, is not about forcing yourself into the 5 a.m. routine of a lion if you are a wolf by nature. It is the opposite of conformity. It is the deeply personal practice of discovering your own rhythm and having the courage to honor it. This is the essence of Kaizen, the philosophy of continuous, mindful improvement. It begins not with a new app, but with an old command. Know thyself. But here is the crucial, overlooked detail that changes everything. The Pomodoro technique was never engineered for deep work. It was born in the 1980s as a simple tool for simple tasks, tackling administrative work, cleaning, and replying to emails. Its genius lies in conquering procrastination for chores that require discipline, not depth. Pomodoro provides the structure to begin. It is a shield against the initial resistance of mundane work. Modern research validates this division. A pivotal study from the University of Illinois confirmed that brief, scheduled breaks are remarkably effective at preventing mental burnout during sustained attention tasks. These pauses act as a reset, refreshing the mind and restoring focus. This proves a vital point. Rest is not the enemy of productivity, it is its fuel. However, this same body of research reveals a critical twist, a fundamental limitation of the timer. A 2023 study from the University of California uncovered that these frequent, scheduled interruptions can be catastrophic for creative flow. The act of deep study, of wrestling with complex ideas, of solving novel problems, requires unbroken immersion. It demands continuity. You must be allowed to forget that time exists. One of the lead researchers captured this beautifully. Not every masterpiece can be painted in 25-minute blocks. The science, in its own clinical language, had arrived at the monk's ancient truth. Pomodoro is perfect when your hands need discipline, but when your mind needs depth, flow is the only path. The monk's protocol remains the clearest instruction manual. When I sweep, I use Pomodoro. When I study scriptures, I use something different. Today, you don't need a mountain or a monastery. You don't need a broom. You only need to make one conscious choice. Start with one thing. Use Pomodoro when your body needs movement, for cleaning, organizing, replying to emails, and administrative planning. Use flow when your mind needs depth, for studying, writing, creating, designing, and strategic thinking. Discipline is the act of choosing one task. Flow is the state of becoming one with the task. The lesson, once fully absorbed, leaves one final, indelible truth. We must never mistake the measurement of work for the work itself. Let us return to our opening image one last time, to see this truth in its purest form. Imagine Albert Einstein, poised at the blackboard, the final pieces of the universe's puzzle falling into place. He has achieved that sacred, effortless immersion. His mind and the cosmos are a single, unified field. There is no timer, no schedule, no audience. There is only flow. This is the state that forges revolutions. This is the fragile, profound state we must learn to protect above all else. Flow does not bow to a clock. It demands a surrender of control, not a relentless assertion of it. The ultimate lesson is this: you do not need a perfect routine. You do not need to plagiarize another's schedule. You do not need to perform your focus for the world. Stop chasing discipline. Start choosing clarity. Because once you find true clarity, discipline will already be there, waiting for you. See Pomodoro not as a cage, but as a key, a tool to unlock the door when you feel locked out. Use it to start the engine, but use flow to make the journey. Let the timer be your training wheels, essential for getting going, but designed to be shed. The moment you feel the work starting to pull you in, that is your signal. Silence the timer. Step into the current. Pomodoro commands your hands to start. Flow invites your mind to become. And in that state of unified focus, you'll discover that presence is the ultimate productivity. Follow this way of life with us. Until next time. Thank you for watching till the end. Has this content illuminated your path from measurement to meaning? I hope so. To support the channel and see more videos like this in your feed, please like this video and subscribe.